I'll introduce myself, I guess. I'm Kirsten McKenzie. My first book was published in 2015. It was a time travel, the first in a time travel trilogy. The second book was published in 2016. That was with they were both with a UK publisher. I got really tired of writing historical fiction, and so I wrote a thriller. And it was so easy and so fast, and it's very much a closed room thriller, and that's why I'm sitting here today. And it's that was my first thriller, so I've got 3 standalone thrillers. I've got my time travel trilogy, and I'm a full-time author. My time travel trilogy pays my bills, and I've made some amazing friends along the way. I'm going to be reading from my latest release, The Fortune of the Thief, which is just behind Madeline. When I said I got tired of researching historical fiction, I then wrote a historical thriller. It's set in 1966, Florence, Italy, and if you're not familiar with 1966, there was an incredible flood in Florence, and it took out the bottom of the Uffizi Gallery, it took out the National Library, and there were a whole lot of American and English art students in Florence at the time, and they came to the rescue, and they're called Mud Angels, and so they're pretty famous. So everyone else is prepared, and the person who's organised this is not quite as prepared. Please bear with me. There are 5 main characters in this book: the policeman, the wife, the student, the cleaner, the guest who should never have been invited. But there is another character called the river, and it is the river Arno. And she becomes a character in the book. So this chapter is called The River. She revelled in the 7 inches of rain, frolicking like a lamb in a meadow, dashing and crashing, teasing the gods until they threw their hands up in anger, unleashing even more rain to placate the irksome water, taunting them with her earthbound form. The river slid back as the side of the hill tumbled into her clutches, delivering a ton of delectable earth left naked by decades of rampant logging, unfettered by rules or regulations. She clapped her watery hands, dancing in circles until she herself was dizzy with glee. Scooping up handfuls of mud from the riverbed, she dashed the heavy mud against the walls holding her course, knowing that the pressure would weaken the bank until it joined her on her merry path of destruction. Water poured down the valley through farms and houses, pig pens and poultry cages, past towering trees and struggling saplings, saturating graveyards and devastating crops. Egged on by the river, the water stole away washing and chickens and carpentry tools, tossing them wantonly into the churning torrent. 30 miles upstream from the city of Florence, Dante's Valley of Hell was living up to its name. As the river curled through the valley, her tendrils swirling around the telephone poles, ripping them from the sodden earth, and slinging them into the deepening chasm, leaving the citizens of Florence with no warning of the impending inundation. A very short chapter. Shall I read my own questions? Read me my questions? I wrote my own questions, but...
Kirsten. Madeline. So you developed the concept of Criminal Minds, pitching it to the Auckland Fringe Festival. What was the motivation behind your idea, and has it panned out quite how you imagined?
I think I've got mostly full chairs, so it's panned out. My idea behind the concept of Criminal Minds was that genre fiction in New Zealand, non-fiction as well, genre fiction in New Zealand isn't very well supported by the mainstream media. We get a lot of literary fiction featuring in the pages of the Metro and the Listener. We don't see a lot of romance featured at all. And crime is very much the poor cousin, and I wanted to give a platform to crime and thrillers and horrors, because those are some of our most successful authors. And not just me, obviously, But there are some, the Paul Cleaves of the world and the Van der Simons, and everybody who's in this room. And that was my motivation, was to give genre fiction a real platform. And I think, we're in a small room. I couldn't have fit many more people in here, but I think it's good.
I think you've done amazing. Well done. Your thriller books all contain a fraction of paranormal, but in your latest book, The Forger and the Thief, you have a sentinel being in the form of a river. How important is the river as a character?
So I wrote the book, and then I went in and I wrote all the river chapters, and I wrote them in one day. So the book took a year to write, but I wrote the river chapters in one day. And the river, if you go back and you read Leonardo da Vinci was telling the councils of Florence that they needed to do something about their flood defences back in the day. So back in the day, they already knew that if you take all the trees out of the valleys, the water's going to come down the Arno Valley and it's going to take out the cities. So that's how long nobody's been paying attention to using nature as a way, as a natural flood defences. And it just goes on and on when you read the history of Florence, that all the logging, all the destruction, all the building of artificial channels, and it happens all around the world, that nobody's listening to nature and everything's just being destroyed. And then what happens? We get flooding, we get sinkholes, we get villages washed away in flash floods. So the river, as a character in The Forger and the Thief, is exacting revenge upon the citizens of Florence for not taking care of nature. So it's not climate changing, but it is climate changing, because and I feel that nature's right to take revenge upon us.
It was very well written. The river, I liked it.
Thank you, Madeline.
Now, what's next? I know it's not on your list, but what's next? We all want to know, right?
So my husband would very much like me to write another time travel trilogy to pay more of the bills. And my daughter and I drove down to Hamilton a week or so ago. She volunteered to do some filming for Surf Life Saving New Zealand. And in the car, we came up with a plot for a new thriller involving a school counsellor. So that will be plotted out. It has been plotted out from start to finish, and I've never plotted a book in my life, so it was a novel experience.
Sounds very intriguing. Is she going to co-write it with you?
I think she should.
Well done.
Thank you.